Mehul, Bhatt, welcome to Conversations Live.
Thank you, Kabir. What a privilege it is to come and talk to you today.
We're really glad to have you.
I must say, I'm a bit tense. The first interview that you had of Ambassador Henry Jardine was so excellent that keeping, on that particular footsteps is going to be complicated. But
I'm sure
I'm
we'll have a
excited about
lovely
it.
chat.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Mehul, Bhatt, strategy and transformational leader. You are somebody that's worked into mergers and acquisition. You're into change management. You are a turnaround professional. You've worked in multiple continents, from what I can understand, the US, Asia, and lately Africa. What is a Premier League player like you doing in Mauritius?
So I was born in India. I spent the first 7 years of my life in India, fairly uneventful. At the age of 7, my family and I, we moved to Tanzania in a small town called Arusha. My dad was a textile engineer and he was heading a large organization over there. And I must say that looking back, that was probably the most formative of all the years. So it was a complete change to move away from a known secure setting of India to an unknown part of Africa. But it really, really transformed me. We spent the next 3 years over there. We moved back to India. I finished my schooling at the age of 17. My mother's a doctor. And back then, when I was growing up in India, you didn't really have a choice of what you would end up doing. So having secured great marks at school, at the age of 17, I joined a medical school to become a doctor. So at 17, I thought I was going to become a doctor. Life was all set. It was all predictable. But that's exactly what disturbs me. When something is so predictable, I get very worried.
Oh.
So after about a year of doing medicine, I realized that I missed the adventure, I missed the traveling, I missed the exploration part of my life. And I had a strange opportunity to go and work on ships in America. So at the age of 18, I left medical studies, I left my home, I left India and moved to the United States to work with a company called Chevron, which is a very large American oil company. And I spent a lot of time in their refineries in different parts of the United States. I got a chance to travel around the world. I became fully independent. I spent 7 years doing that and studying. And then we moved to Copenhagen. We got an opportunity to move to this most exciting city in the world. We spent the next 5 years in Copenhagen. That's where I discovered the finance, strategy, change management side of my life. And it really, really transformed me. So after spending time in Copenhagen, we had an opportunity to, again, start exploring all over again. And we had a choice to move either to China, India, or Africa.
So really traveling the world.
Really traveling the world. And my family and I, we've always been very experimental, let's put it that way. And then we moved to Africa again for the first time in my adult life. Spent 3 years in Kenya. Then we had an opportunity to move to UK. So we moved to UK. And that's where the Mauritian journey started. That's where Rogers was looking to expand into Africa. And in that particular meeting, I got very intrigued by the business landscape of Mauritius. Because what really excites me, I love the beaches, I love the sea, I love the sand. But that's not really what drives me. It's the people, it's the intellect, it's the business, it's the way a country transforms itself to improve its life. And that's where I first learned the story of Mauritius, and I was very intrigued. And within 2 months, I found myself on a flight in 2013 to Mauritius.
So Mehul, you've worked across the world in major countries, major developed countries, major developed economies like the US, Europe. But what was your initial feel when you came to Mauritius, Mauritius as an economic and investment destination?
When I came over here, I was very pleasantly surprised. I did not expect Mauritius to be so developed. I did not expect the Mauritian business environment to be so deep, so sophisticated. I did not expect my business interactions to be so exciting.
That's very interesting coming from you, because obviously you've been to a few places, you've worked in multiple continents. What has been your first impression coming to Mauritius and seeing the financial and economic industries in Mauritius?
So I love traveling. I love exploring. If I could be born 200 years back and be an explorer, I would do that, right? And that kind of sense of exploration has taken me to over 80 countries. I've not worked in 80 countries, but I've traveled to over 80 countries. And I must say that Mauritius is extremely special. my first impressions were not that amazing. Mauritius is like an onion, right? It has a lot of layers. The top layer is very beautiful, beautiful hotels, great infrastructure, nice beaches, a lot of sand, a lot of sea, ocean, and so on. And that's beautiful. But after 1 week, you can't have more of that, right? That's it. The next layer, when you spend a little bit more time getting to know the place, it opens up. That's a business landscape. You realize that beyond this external beauty is this immense amount of enterprise, entrepreneurship, hard work, sacrifice that has kind of built this nation. So it takes time to get to know. You have to make a lot of effort over here compared to many other places. And then when you peel that layer and then you look at the people, and that's really what makes Mauritius special. And I promise you that it takes a long time. And I do not think that if there was no COVID, we would have loved Mauritius as much as we love today. Because for the first time, I think, in the history of Mauritius, so many interesting people in Mauritius are stuck inside Mauritius. And for an outsider like me who really wanted to become a part of Mauritius, it allowed me to meet such a variety of people who told me the story of Mauritius, of how it evolved from a monocrop country to kind of start building up new layers of the economy, the textile layer, the tourism layer, the financial services layer, and now more and more layers like life sciences, silver economy, blue economy, and so on. So the history and the story of Mauritius is very, very deep, but it's very complex to unfold. And I believe that Mauritius hasn't done enough to tell its story widely, much better.
So clearly there seems to be an extra effort required to pull in more people like yourselves into Mauritius. What do you think, having gone through this experience, what do you think that effort would be?
I think the first and the most important thing is to make a choice. The question is, does Mauritius, and I don't know the answer, does Mauritius really want and need a lot more people? That's a question that needs to be asked, because we do say that the population is falling. We do say that we need more and more foreigners to come in across all the different levels. But there's a lack of alignment in terms of what we say we want, the policy making, the way we are structured as a society. It's not all aligned. And either answer is right. So it may be that the path is that, okay, we don't need too many people from outside, but we just will change the way our economic activities work to live with a falling population. Or we make a choice. So making that choice and then being very clear about that choice is very important. Once that choice is made, then creating that alignment across the different policies, the way we advertise about Mauritius, the way we talk about Mauritius, the way the Mauritian business leaders, the political leaders go out and speak in the global arena, the way the society takes new people coming in from outside has to align itself. And this is not an easy task. It requires a lot of national dialogue. It requires dialogues across different parts of Mauritius, the government, the private sector, the society. But if there is no alignment, it becomes extremely complicated to attract and retain good people. I'm not sure what the right answer is. I believe that Mauritius would be better off with a fewer more people, with continuing to build up more and more inclusive space for people with different cultural backgrounds. It would make Mauritius more magical. Mauritius's history is not very long, but what it has created in this short period of time is very rich. And one of the big reasons for that is having multitude of people coming together in this melting pot and creating what it is today. It's one of the things that I love about Mauritius. So I believe that it needs to be done, but I think that choice needs to be made by people in Mauritius. And it must be an honest choice.
Mehul, what's quite interesting is you started your career in shipping and oil at the age of 18. And you're today a sustainability advocate. Do you think that journey going through the fossil fuel driven energy has driven you to become who you are today?
Well, I'm a very pragmatic person. So I'm, philosophical, but very pragmatic as well, right? I think I started my journey with oil. And back when I started that journey, oil and energy was everything, right? People were worried that oil will finish by 2020 and we will have no more oil to power the world. So that when I started my career just 25 years back, that was a fear. And now we live in a world where oil is considered to be a bad thing. So I don't get too influenced by extremes. I believe that the world has certain problems that need to be solved. And those problems are human problems, right? Energy is a way that we solve some of the challenges that we face. We want to change the environment around us, and oil was a solution that we believed was right at that point in time. And I was very excited, and I feel very proud about me spending that time over there, because it gave me a sense of why is energy important. It gave me a sense of how energy is used differently in different parts of the world, and it allowed me to understand the trade-off and the movement of energy. We are now more educated. We are now more aware. We know that some of the good things that oil comes with also comes with other challenges that it brings on. And we believe now that in the future, oil cannot be a sustainable source of energy. So I believe that my background in energy has been very instrumental in me thinking about some of the solutions for the future. And I believe it's completely consistent. I still believe that oil will continue to play a very important role in the transition, because a lot of things that make energy green need energy as well. So solar power needs cells which need energy. The wind power needs turbines which need energy. And a lot of that is oil powered. So I think we need to be pragmatic. It will not be a switch from one day to the next, but it's going to be a journey. But it's a journey that we must commit to. We must believe in, and we must collectively set up a set of rules that will allow us to get there.
One aspect that is at the top of the agenda in most boardrooms is the sustainability aspect. And I think businesses today are taking this extremely seriously. From what you've told us, having gone across the world, seen how things are being done, what is your view on this, from a global perspective?
Right. So I think sustainability has become some sort of a buzzword these days, right? Like sustainability really, really means that you are able to do things consistently over a period of time without taking a lot of resources away. So if you think about it from that particular mindset, the fact that so many companies in Mauritius and around the world have existed for so long means that they're doing something right. So I think we should start with that. We also have to accept that climate change and the impact of humans on the world is real. It is causing changes of seasons. It's causing the fast increase of ocean levels and many other things. So we need to kind of think about it from two different prisms. The first prism is that of a risk management prism. So how do we make sure that all the changes around us, which are happening at a much faster pace than before, do not impact us negatively? Because just thinking about it, over the last 10,000 years, the sea levels have actually risen over 100 meters after the last ice age ended. So it's not the increase of sea levels, it's the pace of increase of sea levels that is worrying. It's the pace of removal of biodiversity that is worrying. So the first way to look at it is from the risk side of things. How do we manage this risk of things changing so fast?
How do we not fall into that trap?
Right. So ESG has become some sort of a big buzzword, right? So if you don't spend 30 pages on your integrated report talking about ESG, how many times you've cleaned up the beaches and how many liters of water you've saved and so on and on and on, people look at you as if you've done a criminal activity, right? And I think this whole complexity of reporting on ESG, on sustainability, is one of the big reasons on why greenwashing is becoming so prevalent, where companies feel the need to fill up a few pages, do a certain number of activities, which may or may not have the actual impact on the world that it needs to have. So I think the first thing is that we need to make the whole reporting structure a lot more streamlined and simple. The second thing is we need to ensure that we make sustainability sustainable. We have to create a set of rules through which doing the right thing is also more profitable. We cannot ask people to play the game of business and telling them, oh, we want you to lose just because you do the right thing. If you're playing a game of Monopoly and you could go around, start every turn, you would do that. There is a reason why there's a set of rules. So we need to change those rules. And the third thing is we need to really, really, get the leaders and the people to believe that this is important for the business in the short term and the long term. And if we manage to do these different things, then we will ensure that whatever the companies feel the need to report is what they truly believe will make a positive difference to the environment, to the society, and to their bottom line. We have to create alignment. And that's when we will remove a lot of the greenwashing. What's also happening on greenwashing is that many countries around the world, and especially in Europe and in the US, are making these quite serious offenses. So in Europe, for example, if you have mislabeled your goods or services, and this is found to be greenwashing, where the underlying information that you're giving to your customers is not true, then all the profits that come from those goods and services can be taken away. And on top of that, they could charge you a penalty for actually greenwashing. So that's another thing. But I'm a big believer that we need to change the set of rules and beliefs to change the behaviors.
Where does Mauritius fit into this picture?
Mauritius is a very, very small country. The impact that it has on the global climate change, the lack of biodiversity, or the changes in biodiversity, it's very, very small. I think the general tendency to believe that we cannot do anything about it is a wrong one. I believe we always have a choice, right? I believe Mauritius has a choice to try to make a positive impact. We can do a lot of things internally to safeguard ourselves from the risks, but I think we can do even more in trying to solve some of these problems, getting that expertise, and then exporting that knowledge, exporting that expertise, exporting that know-how to other island nations around the world in trying to solve these problems.
When we look at beach erosion, the rise of temperatures in Mauritius, which is slightly higher than the average rise in temperatures as per the Director of Climate Change in Mauritius, that has really caught the attention of our blue chip captains. From what you're saying, how do you think the future is looking like when we, in the next decade or so?
But coastal erosion is a very complicated subject. It's not as easy as saying the water levels are rising and hence the beaches are eroding away. There are many other factors that contribute to it. The fact that we have rivers whose river banks are not solid, it's a problem. We have mangroves on many of our coast, which if are kept intact and grown further will reduce the pace of it. We can do a lot of things with breakwaters. We can do a lot of things with keeping our corals more alive. So
are we aligned with those things? When we
I don't think so to the extent that we should. I think there's awareness. I believe there's a willingness to do something about it. I think there's a lack of know-how in how do you do it. I believe there's a lack of financing in how to go about it. But that's where the excitement is, right? Like when the gold rush happened in California, people didn't know everything, but they created this whole exciting set of circumstances saying that, okay, if you get here, if you have this know-how, people from all over the world, please come over here and you get a chance to win big. When the digital transformation started, again, Silicon Valley said, okay, we're going to create the circumstances and situations, and people from all around the world would come over here and solve that problem. I think we have an exciting situation like that. I think climate change and sustainability focus is one of those very, very, very fundamental drivers that is going to drive the economic activity of the world for a very long period of time to come. So Mauritius does not have to find all the answers. Mauritius does not have to find all the money. We just have to create the right set of circumstances where we excite people who want to participate in solving this problem to come here and solve it.
And this problem has a big link to the way we measure and record our carbon footprint and the way we do our ESG reporting. What is your view on this?
Complicated. I must say I've been doing sustainability for a while, but if you ask me to give you a simple answer on how the reporting works, I would find it very difficult. I believe we have so many different standards, both internationally and nationally, that it's very, very complicated for people to really understand how well we are doing. And that unfortunately results in a lot of greenwashing, which is exactly what we should try to avoid. Is that surprising? No. When companies started and there was a lot of accounting, there were different accounting standards around the world. And it took a lot of time for all the accounting standards around the world to harmonize. I believe the time that it's going to take to harmonize the sustainability reporting is going to be significantly less. So my answer is that there are a lot of positive things happening, both nationally and globally. There are a lot of conversations happening, which will simplify the reporting. But as of now, the reporting tends to be very complex and gives very little view on what the actual progress is.
Staying by the sea and moving to the port, which is your topic that you focus on. You co-authored an article with Zahir Alam in 2019, where you highlighted the challenges driving up freight cost. And when we look at the current situation of, the war in Ukraine, the Red Sea situation, are there any further insights that you can share with us?
I think it's very important to reflect, where we come from, right? I think Mauritius is this amazing nation, and the fact that Mauritius is what it is today is because of its maritime history. That has played a very, very big role. We kind of talk of star and key of the Indian Ocean, and again, that's something that is that we should still think about it very, very seriously. When we look at the global shipping trades, even today, the biggest volume of ships actually don't pass too far away from Mauritius through our EEZ. So we have a very special place in the global trade. Now, my interest in this particular subject, of course, it evolves from my own history in the maritime sector, mostly with AP Moller Maersk, which is one of the largest companies in the world. But at least in Mauritius, it evolved when, during the COVID period, there were two major incidents. One, the incident of Akashio, and secondly, the increasing freight rates. And I remember seeing an article in one of the newspapers in Mauritius where there was a picture of a Maersk ship. And it said that these big shipping companies are skipping small countries like Mauritius to prioritize profit over, making sure that they are solidaire in many ways. And I looked at that article and I felt quite strongly about it. And I felt, why would a country like Mauritius, which has got such a rich maritime history, which is right at the center of maritime trades, now have to, I won't call the word beg because that's kind of pushing it, but almost request shipping companies to participate in Mauritius. That seems counterintuitive because they should be actually lining up to work with us in simplifying their global networks rather than us trying to do that. And that kind of forced me to look deeper into it. And then I realized that while Mauritius had made such huge progress in the port, in the way the maritime activity is handled, for a long period of time, we've actually been quite stagnant. We became too happy with the way things were. And for a long period of time, we haven't changed that. And that has resulted in a few things. The cost of importing and exporting is extremely high. The competition from the rest of Africa is significantly high. The climate change is impacting our port. And all of these factors put together make us more vulnerable today than we were in the past. The volumes of the port have dropped more than 25% over the last couple of years. And that's a challenge. I think we need to acknowledge it. Can we solve that problem? Absolutely. What do we need to do? A multitude of things. I feel very positive about it because there are a lot of conversations happening today, both at the industry level and at the government level. But we need to make certain changes in our port quite urgently to, one, safeguard ourselves from some of the global dynamics, like the ones that you just pointed out. But two, even more importantly, and even more exciting, to make us one of the most exciting global hubs in the world, which we can be.
Do you think we could be seen as an alternative route to the Red Sea?
We are. The thing is that we are already seen as one of the alternative routes. The question is whether the shipping companies will decide to make Mauritius a hub or not. There is more traffic which comes through Mauritius than which goes via Red Sea, always. With the issues in Middle East today, there is even more traffic that is passing by today. The issue is that many of these ships and shipping companies do not choose to make Mauritius their port of stop. And if we change some of the conditions over here, many more would, and that would impact us immensely positively.
What about Maersk? Do you think Maersk would be interested in having a regional hub in Mauritius?
The question is, do we want Maersk to set up a regional hub over here? And do we understand their problems and their opportunities well enough to attract them over here? Let's put things in perspective. The GDP of Mauritius is around $11 billion. The revenues of Maersk are a significant multiple of $11 million. So economically, they are very, very, very large. So we have to do what it takes to attract them, to bring them over here. Does it make sense from a geographic point of view? Absolutely. Does it make sense from a people perspective, the intellect perspective? Absolutely. Does it make sense from an infrastructure perspective? Well, we need to improve the port, but it could be done. So I think we have all the ingredients, but again, we have to make up our mind. and make a clear value proposition for companies like not only Maersk, but many other global companies like MSC, Hapag-Lloyd, CMSC, GM, and many others to come and set up their headquarters over here. If a company is working across Africa, I believe that we are one of the best countries placed to have their global headquarters or the regional headquarters for Africa. And we need to change the value proposition that we offer. It's really up to us. And they will all come.
Last year in BIZWEEK, you mentioned that Mauritius could become a green port.
The green port question comes in for two reasons. The first question is that Mauritius has made some commitments towards 2030 and then beyond to reduce certain emissions. Now, this will require a completely different set of fuels to come into Mauritius. Now, we do not have the scale. We have 1.3 million people in the country. We do not have the scale to get it right at the right price. And that's why today, 80% of the power still comes from coal and heavy fuel oil. And we need a catalyst to help us reduce the cost. Now, port can be that catalyst. The same fuel that goes into running some of the new age ships, maybe the same fuel that could help us have more greener energy in Mauritius. So having a green port could actually catalyze a lot of other things on the island. Green port is also exciting because no other country is focusing so much on it. By us focusing on being the first green port will allow more traffic to come into Mauritius.
For the purpose of our viewers, can you explain what a green port is?
Sure. So a green port would be a port which would be completely carbon neutral in the way it runs. So a port is a very energy intensive unit. You have extremely heavy gantry cranes that pick up cargo and put in the cargo. You have tugboats which are powered by oil, which carry ships or move ships around the port. And by aiming to be the first port where all the fuel that is used is green fuel, and all the energy that is used is either electric or via green means, would make us the first green port in the world. Do we have all the conditions to do it? Absolutely. Can we find the right partners to do it? Absolutely. But it's setting the ambition and being serious about it is what is extremely important.
We're talking about the airport, we're talking about the port, we're talking about the connectivity value proposition of Mauritius. How do you think we can improve on that?
Sure. I think Mauritius, being a small island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, means that connectivity is everything. And connectivity, we need to be more broader about it, right? Port connectivity is one. Airport connectivity is another. The data connectivity is a third one. The idea connectivity is another one. The whole people intellectual side of it is another one. So I think we need to look at connectivity very broadly. If we specifically focus on port and airport, I think airport has done a good job overall. There's a lot of things to be improved, but historically it's done a good job in making sure that the tourism industry, the textile industry, and many other industries flourish while making sure Mauritius remains connected to the rest of the world. Historically, the port has done extremely well, where we were one of the leading ports across Africa and one of the leading ports in the world. I think there we've taken a little bit of a complacent setup where we've not moved up the value chain as we should. And a lot of work is required on that particular front. But whether we look at airport, port, data, I think there are three elements that are very important. The first one is governance, right? Like making sure that we have the right setup to be able to succeed. Do we have the right structure in place? Do we have the right ambition in place? Do we communicate it right enough? So that's all governance. The second one is hardware, right? So do we have the right hardware that is required? So if you look at the port, it needs a few more gantry cranes. It needs a breakwater. It needs some other equipment like tugs to operate. So do we have the hardware in place? And the third one is software. Do we have the manpower, the software systems and others to kind of make it work? And there also, I believe a lot is lacking. But again, as I said, I believe that this is being looked into, and I feel positive about some of the changes that we ought to make and that are in the process of being made. But that needs to be accelerated much faster.
Serious challenges facing our more traditional industries like our sugar industry, textile manufacturing industry, major economic pillars of Mauritius. Do you think that those industries can still be transformed?
I think my view is that you kind of need three things for problems to get solved. One, you need the infrastructure, right? And Mauritius has enough good infrastructure. We lack infrastructure, probably a little bit at the port. Airport can get better, but otherwise infrastructure is good. And then you have two others, which are innovation and intellect. innovation is something that as a nation we need to do a lot more of. We did a lot of that in the past to kind of make the whole economic miracle that we are today, but that needs a lot more focus. And then that kind of leaves you with intellect. And Mauritius, being Mauritius, it's a very special melting pot, has a lot of intellect. The challenge has been a lot of the young people have been deciding to leave Mauritius rather than coming back after studies and working over here. And to attract them, we need to create the right set of circumstances. So a lot of the industries that we talked about, whether it's tourism or the sugar or the textiles, these industries will continue in the future. You will still expect people to travel. The way people travel is changing, but people will still travel. Sugar will continue to be important to us. Textiles is going to be extremely important in the future as well. And all these three businesses can transform themselves to cater to the needs for the future consumers, who are all focused on sustainability, who are all focused on getting the right experiences, and so on. And I believe that if we have the right level of intellect, creating the right level of innovation in a place like Mauritius, which has the right infrastructure, I believe that these businesses can be transformed.
That's exactly what you've been preaching about: change management, mindset, and all the rest. And how do you apply this into what you're saying, into changing people's mindset to be able to achieve those goals?
You're right. Maybe I'll take a little bit of an example with Denmark, and Denmark and Mauritius are the places where I've spent most amount of time, and two places where I consider myself at home. And if you look at a small country like Denmark, which is not too large, population of 5 million people, no natural resources, extremely flat, extremely difficult weather conditions. One of the things that they've done extremely, extremely well is to really create so much innovation, which has allowed them to create so many global companies. You talk of Novo Nordisk, which supplies diabetes drugs around the world. You talk of Maersk, which is a shipping giant. You talk of Vestas. So every time they look at a problem, they say, okay, how do we solve that for the world? Now, one of the things with Mauritius, which I think needs to kind of change, and that's kind of the big change management, is how do we stop believing that our market is a market of 1.3 million people to how do we make it a hub, an incubator to find the solutions of the future. And in Mauritius, I think we are more conservative. We feel that, okay, we need to be careful. We need to be more measured in our approach. And I think with the quality of manpower that exists in Mauritius, the high level of intellect that exists in Mauritius, and this amazing place that it is, we have to make it an innovation hub. And that will require some change. But the moment we do that, I think a lot of people would like to kind of come back. A lot of diaspora would like to come back and participate in this innovation process. And then that's a big change that we need to make.
In a paper you published at the London Business School, you said there was a quote which said the road to success and the road to failure are almost exactly the same. Goes in line with what you're saying with regards to mindset and everything. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. It brings back good memories of studying in a business school. And I think that project, which we did for the British Parliament, Turk and myself, is probably one of the most interesting projects that we worked on. And we had the privilege of meeting many of the most successful companies in the UK, meeting people who made it a success. And when we looked at the data, and it all starts with data, we realized that if we looked at the last 150 years worth of data, barely 2 or 3% of the companies survived. So the companies which did extremely, extremely well in 1900s would almost not exist in 2000s and so on. And we realized the more and more we looked into it, we realized that, what really makes companies successful, there are a lot of factors that go into it. And I think in that paper, we listed down about 6 factors. When companies do well, when companies and countries and people do well, and there's a resistance to change. The challenge is that the world moves around them and they evolve. But companies, because that there is some magic formula that makes you successful, you keep at it. You keep at it much longer than what you should. And exactly the same things that made you successful, just because you hold it for so long, do not allow you to progress to the next level. And I was seeing a very interesting documentary right on my flight last week, and it was about BlackBerry. And BlackBerry became immensely successful in 2000s, early 2000s, and they get obsessed with the clicks, with the keyboard. And when Apple launched its iPhone, they could have gone much faster and moved to a touch phone based system, but they were so obsessed with what made them successful that they couldn't make the change. And that's true for companies, that's true for people, that's true for countries, and that's what we found in the report. So that's where the quote comes from.
That's to do a lot with leadership in driving teams. In the same paper, you made a contrast between the heroic, charismatic leader and the leader with more soft skills. Why and how do you think you can put this into context today?
Yeah, I think one of the big values, again in that paper we talk a lot about it, but one of the big values that come together in good leadership is humility, right? It says, how humble are you? How can you motivate not only people but teams to work together? How do they see you as an authentic, true leader? Can they trust you? So a lot of these qualities kind of go against the heroic leadership kind of picture that we see in movies all the time. And more data that you actually read tells you that a majority of the Fortune 500 CEOs are actually more introverts than they are extroverts. Now, does that mean that you have to be silent all the time? No. Leaders have to be able to adapt to the situation they are put in. And that means that sometimes you go out and take stands and speak out openly and be that heroic leader. But most of the times what people and organizations want is to have somebody who you can trust, who you can relate to, who you can work with, who you inspire to wake up every day and do your best. And these qualities come with leaders who are more authentic and who are just not people who show a certain face and are completely different people. And more we learn that. And if you look at some of the companies around the world that are succeeding extremely well, and we can look at the technology companies today, most of the leaders are quite silent. They're very trustworthy. They talk sense. They inspire a lot of trust. They inspire a lot of followership. And I think the world is probably a better place with more of those leaders than only out there in your face leaders. So.
And the last quote I'd like to bring up from the same paper, and yes, Mehul, we've read your paper. The team that gets the best players on the field playing together always wins. Now, that is something that I'd normally hear Jürgen Klopp say these days. And yes, I'm a fan. But can you elaborate? Can you tell us maybe how and what real transformational change is?
I think there's a lot of that. And there were two kind of things over there, right? One is getting the right team, right people in the team together. So that's really important. It's intellect, it's belief, it's your own set of values, which make people who they are, and getting the right people is very important. That doesn't always mean people who have the most education. That's not always correlated. It's people who are right for that particular role. But the second part is even more important, is how do you get them to work together? Because and that you can see in football and in many other sports, it's about when you get the right team together, they usually end up being extremely good individual workers. So if you do not have the right leader, you do not have the right coach who can get them to work together, the team fails because then it's working against each other. And more of that is needed today. And one of the things that surprises me in Mauritius, and kind of coming back to that, and now not looking at it at a company level, but at a country level. And I've said before, Mauritius is a country that I was a very reluctant my arrival in Mauritius was very reluctant one, but it's a country that I've fallen in love with. And if I look at Mauritius, and again compare it to Denmark to a large extent, is Mauritius has an amazing set of enterprises who've done extremely well over the last hundreds of years. It's also created new industries like the financial services, tourism, and textiles over the last few years. But it's also one of the very interesting things for me, where while many of these enterprises compete within Mauritius, they've not been able to collaborate together and work together in taking many of these strong industries in Mauritius to the rest of the world. We've not been able to create strong Mauritian multinationals. And that kind of is a good example to say, okay, we have extremely good individual setups, but how can we work together as an industry, as a nation, to export more of this Mauritian expertise and know-how? And that's a good example of saying, okay, we have good players and we've done extremely well over here, but how do we use some of that to work together to expand our national reach and influence, which is very important.
And following from what you're saying, how do we nurture this sort of mindset going forward in the kids going through universities and going into the workplace? Are we doing enough?
It's a very interesting question, and I have fairly strong views on that. If you just look back 100 years, right, and look back at some of the top leaders that kind of came out, they basically finished their education by the time they were 13, 14. They already built up a lot of work experience before that. Many people started working full-time by the age of 15. If you look at many of the world politicians and diplomats, they had multiple skills. So they were engineers and theologists and agriculturalists and so on. So it was all about making an impact and solving the problem that the world needs to be solved. I think over the last 100 years, we've put a very rigid institutional system in place where education has extended quite significantly, right? So you finish the basic school at the age of 18. You go through university, you go through your master's, and we produce extremely specialized set of people. Now, the challenge is today the world is changing, right? The world is changing where a lot of that knowledge is freely available, right? You have ChatGPT, which you push any information and you can get any information. So a lot of the skills that people are coming out with today are already automated. And that's where creativity, problem solving, in being very agile in the way you adapt to the situation and adapt yourself to the situation is very important. And I must say a story just to kind of describe that. One of my leaders is somebody called Sir Ernest Shackleton. And he was a very interesting leader, one of the best leaders who wanted to be the first one in the world to reach the South Pole. He never did, but he created amazing stories along the way. And the second voyage that he was on was on a ship called the Endurance. He had about 27 crew members. And when he selected the crew members, he selected a variety of crew members, including one photographer and one musician. And people were saying, okay, you have only 27 people that you can take. Why will you take a musician on board when you're going through one of the most difficult journeys? And he said, no, we need that variety. And the ship got stuck in winter, never reached the South Pole. All the people survived for almost 1.5 years. And one of the big reasons that they survived is that musician was able to keep the spirits high. So you realize that leaders have a very complex task today to understand and find the right mix of people who will be able to solve the problems of the future, because we just don't know what the problems are. So to answer your question again, I believe that the whole education system, the whole work experience system has to be changed. One, the population growth is slowing down. So we have fewer workers tomorrow than we had in the past. So we need people who are able to do multitude of things, who are able to adapt, who can have multiple careers rather than get fixated on one single task for the rest of their life. And I believe that will define the success of companies, individuals, and countries.
So Mehul, you've been around the world. You are now in Mauritius.
Absolutely.
Do you consider yourself a Mauritian?
Absolutely. I'm not a Mauritian national yet, but I do consider myself Mauritian.
And as a Mauritian, what would you like to see from an economic, from a social, from a cultural aspect going forward in Mauritius?
I think that's an interesting and a difficult question, because I have to put myself into the shoes, which I have chosen to do that now. This is home, and this will be home for many more years to come. As I always go back to Mauritius, one of the things that really excites me about Mauritius is the history, the rich history of Mauritius, the people, the cultural melting pot that it is. And I really believe that, socially, we have to be a lot more proud of what we've created. I think what we've done in Mauritius is unique in the world, right? We had very, very low chance of success across our history, not only the last 50, 60 years, but historically, but we made it. Not only did we make it, but we created this amazing island that we have today. And I think just seeing a lot more pride in what has been done so far and a lot more confidence going ahead is extremely important. So socially, I would love to see more of that. And I've seen that in a place like Denmark, right? So it's very visible that the pride to be a Danish national is so big. And I think there's a little bit more that we can do over here. Culturally, we've again had an extremely rich cultural history where so many different groups of people have come together and created this amazing country. And maintaining and really driving more and more cultural mix into Mauritius is going to be extremely important, because that's what really makes us interesting. That's what makes us or have the ability to solve problems as they come along. The world in the future will need a lot more creativity, a lot more agility, a lot more problem solving. And that comes from diversity. And that whole cultural diversity that we've had, and we take it for granted over here, needs to be nurtured going forward. And that kind of leaves us with economy. And I believe that we are an economic miracle. I think we all talk about it. But I think we have also, in the last couple of years, been fairly flat. Part of it due to COVID, part of it for other reasons. And it's really important to look beyond some of the industries that have made us succeed to the industries of the future. Is that a focus? I believe so. Are we doing enough? Probably not. And many other industries, if you look at the silver economy, the world is aging, right? And Mauritius can play a big role, not only in building houses, but providing the whole bouquet of care services around, but also exporting that. And I keep on saying we have to think outside. We have to think beyond 1.3 million people. So the silver economy is big. The whole life sciences industry is extremely, extremely big, where we are blessed with a lot of natural resources and we can do a lot more. The whole space of sustainability is extremely big. We talked about sustainability related problems. Why don't we make this place a hub to solve some of these problems and export them? The blue economy, I know we've talked about blue economy. It's part of one of the ministries, is an extremely big one. We are one of the largest nations from an ocean perspective. So whether it's shipping or the biopharma or fishing, we can go much more deeper, much more properly in this particular space and make that a big hub. I think we need to think in terms of billion-dollar industries. What industries could be billion-dollar industries in the future? Anything small is not worth it. And all the 4 industries that I've talked about, and many more, are billion-dollar industries. We have to talk of industries where we can attract the right people. We can attract a lot of diaspora back. We can attract foreigners to kind of come in. We need to talk of industries which we can export. We build them in Mauritius, but we export them to the world. I would love to see in the future 10 big Mauritian multinationals which have a brand in the world. And we have all the ingredients apart from that conviction, willingness, confidence to do it. And I would love to see that happen in the future. That's really my wish.
It sounds like exciting journey ahead.
Indeed, and I'm so excited with, as I said, Mauritius, for me, it's like an onion, different layers peel off one after the other, and I can't wait to discover it much more in the future.
Fantastic. Lovely chatting to you, Mehul.
Thank you, Kabir.
And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
In everything you get to do in the future.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again for coming to Conversations Live.
Thank you for